work out. I want to thank you all, and I know that if you've read any in the book, and you've read any of anything, or you tried to make a stab at this, I don't think it's up to me to sort of like say what it actually should look like. I mean, part of the process is that that's different depending on what the group is. What is it that you're leading? What are you doing? It has many different ways that it's, so I guess it's more of an overall philosophy than a particular way that I want, I could say this is the 1, 2, 3 of it, but I don't know that that's exactly the intention of another way of the book itself or of the process that was developed. I'm going to start with this poem from Mary Oliver that many of you are familiar with, and it's included in your class notes for today. So it's also on the website for those of you who are on screen. It may be up there now. I don't know. Ellen got it late because I gave it to her late. So you're going to be very familiar with this poem by Mary Oliver. It's found in a couple of her books. It's found in the collection. It's found in this one called Devotions, the New and Selected Poems, Volume 1. But it's a very familiar poem of hers called The Journey. One day you will finally know what you had to do, and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt that old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. So finding purpose, that's chapter 2, finding call, purpose, and a vocation. But it speaks to one of the basic tenets of the book, which is it is by knowing our own stories that we're able to chart that. It is in locating that the way God has spoken to you through all your life, finding that voice and letting that voice lead you, right? That's the whole idea. And we can wait. It doesn't have to, I guess it could happen when you were 12. I don't know anyone like that. But it could happen when you're 40 or when you're 60 or when you're 80, or it continually happens. It's not the sense that there is one beginning, one middle, and one end. It is that it is ongoing, ever happening. Always something new that God's presenting us with. But it's always based on something that's always been there as well. So it messes up with our idea of time. It messes up with our ideas, lots of ideas, right? Our idea of time being like, well, that was then, and there's a timeline, and this is that. So welcome everyone. Let me start this side with Lawson. You can just say, well, let's see. Let's see, Lawson, what should I have you do this morning? Can you say, just say that who you are and maybe why you're here.
I'm Lawson Kelly, originally from Augusta, moved 14 times.
In your adulthood, or
Yeah,
not during your job?
right.
Okay.
And so what do I consider home now? Cashiers in Atlanta, but really Cashiers. Cashiers is my spiritual home. And
You're ambidextrous.
yes, hey, brother.
Hey,
I was just gonna say, when my family, is up here, Irv being one of them, he's my brother, by
Is he
another,
really?
No.
well, yes, but not blood brother.
another mother.
Say father.
Our Heavenly Father, and so, this is where I am spiritually at home. And one reason I'm so spiritually home here is that my two ministries have been so confirmed here of teaching and of prayer. So that's me in a nutshell. I don't know if I mentioned, when my family is here, it is really almost the center of the universe, or in that we've had a child married here. We've had two grandchildren baptized here at this church, and we are going to be buried here. So, when my,
And the Omega.
the
Alpha and the Omega.
the Alpha and the Omega. And so, and when my family visits here, it really is the center of the universe. Mhm.
I'm Sharon. Good morning, everybody. And you said something a minute ago after reading that really hit home, because I had to get help in therapy with it for a long time. You just said, or maybe it happened when you were 12. And it did. And every age that came after, and I don't even go into the pictures that I'm seeing in my head right now, would go back into that chapel in my school, my Catholic school where I was going, to seek advice from that child before I took the next step.
Mhm.
And my therapist told me to finally get that kid to shut up and get in line. Yeah, it's almost too much y'all to explain, but I think maybe you do have a picture. But it was some kind of calling, went then into a know-it-all. It went into, I got this, and I could see me we had a beautiful chapel at our school. And I was up at the lectern at 12. And me at 13, 14, 15, 28, 40, we're sitting there waiting to see what we're gonna do. Thanks for bringing that back up. I'll see you after class.
And we can reframe a lot of things. Thank you.
I'm trying to gather all kinds of scattered thoughts and feelings and trying to make sense of what I would say. But
You're amazing, by the way.
I'm amazing. Thank you. Thank
By
you.
the way.
Oh, I did remember that, but I've got to say it. When I look back and try to capsule and say who I am and where I've been, the only way I can describe it is talking about the progress from process from the false self to the real self, and oh my gosh, those descriptions are just so perfectly describe my life. I lived a different person until I was about 42 and began to unravel and recognize through a loving the real person. It was is, so, so black and white, so, such a different. And to begin to recognize this person as a valuable person. There's just so much, but I guess that is enough.
And we just continually get to try to put language on that,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on forever
Yeah, I
on
know.
it, because I've got a lot of language around it now, but
My 12-year-old would like to talk to you later.
we've talked. You're gonna try to set me straight this late.
No, don't.
Thank you.
I'm Fred.
Yeah, welcome.
I think one of the things you asked us was, what do we hope to get out of this?
Yeah,
And so, and I think I shared this before, but, what I'm hoping to get out of it, because I have had a fair amount of leadership training, but, I hope I can become a better leader, here at the church, being on the vestry now and outreach and junior warden and all of that. I certainly recognize my weaknesses, and I'd like to be a better leader, and especially like to be a better leader at home and with my family, et cetera. As I think I defined it, I wrote it down so I remembered it was, I'd like to be a softer, gentler leader, instead of probably a type A leader, which is my default always. And so those are things that I certainly hope to get out of this and work on. And to that end, there was something on, in the study this week, I might be a week off, but under establishing shared guidelines, and there was 5 points that they made. 3 of them really hit home for me, and one of them was shift from certainty to curiosity. Because a lot of times I don't think I search the curiosity in people, you know, just sort
the
of.
wonder, yeah,
Sort of just go to the certainty part.
right.
Learn to
Wait a minute, your uncertainty, or, I mean, say more, but.
Well, I think a lot of times when I share things with people, I sort of start with the assumption of that I know what the certainty is.
Right.
Instead of maybe approaching it with the curiosity part, you know, which I thought was just an interesting way to put it. Learn to respond to others with honest, open questions. That's a double-edged sword. You have to be a little careful nowadays with that honest and open question. You need to do it in not a cruel way, but a sensitive way, if you will. And then lastly, listen generously, which I thought was another one that for me was important, because there's a difference between hearing and listening. And when you listen, it can be generous. When you just hear it,
Yeah, and we're gonna have to establish those guidelines among ourselves too.
Right.
So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I'm Alice.
Dollars or higher. Just use the promo code FLOW. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold Investments. Hurry and go to noblegoldinvestments.com to secure your wealth. That's noblegoldinvestments.com.
Thank you. Anyway, I'm here with you. I want to find you. Ida, can you put yourself on mute?
Yes, let me do that.
Yes, thanks.
Sorry.
It's okay. So I'm just,
Started.
I don't know, I think I'm always.
hi, I'm Allison.
I'm
We'll
Allison.
start over.
I'm glad that you're all here. Thank you.
I'm Ann Austin, and what Lawson said struck a chord, because I was recently reading the biography of Nancy Hanks, who was the chairman for the National Endowment of the Arts and lived right down the road here, their summer home. And in it, she talks a lot about Cashiers always being her spiritual home. She referred to that so often, even though she, lived in Washington and all over the country. So I've been here for 80 years, almost 80 years. Is that somebody laughing? I've thought a lot in the last 48 hours about Phil Hare, who was our state representative for 20 years, and his wife Connie, who's one of the people I most admire in the whole world, of how they were able to accomplish so much. I mean, it's amazing what the two of them accomplished. but in a way that led people to encourage people to follow them. And you don't ever think of them being involved in these big fights and controversies and, everybody divided on two sides. And I feel like I've been involved in a lot of controversies and trying to stick up for the way I think is right. And, I wonder if there's a way to be a better leader than, holding my ground and fighting against the other side. And so a recent controversy I'm involved in is the treatment of the McKinney Meadow, for example. And there are lots of ideas about how to steward that property. And I want it to be something where we all come together and work together for a common outcome rather than I win, you lose, or vice versa. So when I saw this being promoted, I thought, well, I bet you I can learn a lot from coming here and listening to other people and talking about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. What a great kind of neutral. I'm sure that people who feel strongly about whatever the use of the McKinney Meadow is, feel strongly about it, but what a beautiful example of some way that to have those conversations about its use and future, right? Yeah, right. Without getting involved, yes. Yeah.
Way I can maybe apply some new skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, Kate, good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm Kate, and I'm an hour earlier than all the rest of you, which seems very strange, having just arrived back in Florida, in the safe part, I guess, from right now. And this book was packed in a box that I wasn't allowed to open yet, per Joe Golston's packing system. But I did find it, much to his chagrin, when he comes home and finds that box open in the garage. I don't know. In all honesty, I said, I bought the book and said, I'm going to do the class because Allison is leading it. Now that may not be what you're supposed to say, but I figure that whenever Allison is leading a group, I'm going to learn something. And then when I found out that, company of Irv and Sharon and Maisie, I thought, well, I have to get there just to hear what they say. I don't know that I ever want to lead anything ever again. I have been a leader of too many things. And what was that? And
Slida trying to connect in the car.
Okay. I've been there.
Yeah.
It's, when you've done lots and lots of leading, I find that a lot of times you just end up getting stomped on, because there'll be those that will think they could have led better. Well, why didn't they? And so I'm just interested to hear what, as usual, my brain trust is going to teach me.
All right, we're ready for you. And maybe like Fred, we'll find out that maybe leadership means a lot of different things. And maybe if our leadership roles are now soft roles as opposed to hard roles. Perhaps one of us would go on to be the CEO somewhere. I don't think that's really the goal, right? But we do exercise soft leadership all the time in our families, in our neighborhoods, among our friends, and even in our own lives, just leadership of our own spiritual life. And that those things are somehow connected, because I've done a lot of leadership classes, probably like Fred, what is the leader of the year and what do they say? And I've had people try to put together the spiritual aspects of that, right? How does Malcolm Gladwell speak to I don't know, whatever it is. So I think this is the first book, and this book is not new, and I've said that, and I read it the first time over 4 years ago, and I was not in a place where I thought I could even introduce this material to my vestry. So because I was gonna be the one introducing it, so it was not gonna go well. So, but that the leadership is just kind of in the way I conduct my life was just a new thing to me, and that I didn't have to say, put the partitions up. It was a spiritual exercise, leadership exercise, personal community work, blah, 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 that I could remove maybe those barriers. And allow us to engage just in a way that just is who we are. And that's the part that's intriguing for me. Welcome. Glad you could make it.
Glad to be here. I brought Ellen to Greenville today, so that's why I'm on Zoom. I'd rather be there in person because I get more out of it probably a little bit that way. I'm here because I like going to these classes. I always feel like I learn something, and I don't think you should ever want to stop learning. So several comments that have been made kind of spurred me on to other ideas here. So first, Kate said she doesn't ever want to lead again. I don't think you have that choice, Kate. You got to. You will. You're leading whether you realize it or not. We all do. And leadership is a lot of different things, but I think everybody leads in some fashion. Maybe it's just by the example that you carry out and so forth. But I don't know that leadership is always an option. Second, as I was reviewing my notes last night, because I've been reading the book and I take notes, and I guess I've been thinking this book had to do with leadership, period. But something in my notes triggered a different thought. It's leading change is what something was said early in the book. And so that's a different deal than just leading. And certainly there's some things that are in this book that I find very valuable across the board. But if you look at it in the context of leading change, it takes on a different perspective, I think. And leading change is something I think I've always been involved in, maybe sometimes to a fault, but change is always a big part of what way I look at things. And if you look at it in that light, I think it does take on some different avenues to it. And I would encourage all of us to be thinking, as we read all this stuff and learn, don't just think about it in terms of leadership, but think about it in leading change.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I was thinking, one of my close friends in Greenville is she's chief executive of the United Way here, and she sent me something a few days ago. And in her role, they're really busy. I mean, they're trying to respond to all the chaos that we've been through and everything. And just she was sharing with me several memos that she had sent here and there to her board of directors. And it made me think she is a very strong leader, number one. Second, I'm thinking a lot of the things we're talking about, sit down and get to know people, all what she's going through right now, she doesn't have time to do all that. Nobody would. And you've all known people, maybe you've been there yourself, where you're in an emergency kind of a situation. And man, it's just all hands on deck, and you're running and you're trying to as the leader, you're trying to make sure people are kind of not being as coordinated and as efficient as they can and making sure the right things get done, but you don't have time a lot to think and so forth. And so that really kind of brought into me this whole idea of, well, wait a minute, a lot of the things I'm reading here make a lot of sense to me, but they don't always fit. But when you think about it in terms, again, of leading change, then that puts it in a little different perspective. And so there are different things in leadership that are needed at different times, different skills. And we all can't do all these things we have to have different leaders for different things and different leaders at different times. So anyway, I've read most of the book now and I really think it's good, but it's even better when you put it into a perspective of leading change.
Thank you. That's so key here. Because, that's what when I listen to people struggling with, well, how do I talk to someone about something that I know is a difficult conversation and how do we do that? If there's anything that you take away from here, I hope it is that what you say has an impact, that how you are and how you prepare yourself in some ways. And one of the ways I'm preparing myself is just by reading this book or leading this class, right? Like yes, there are things I wish were different in the world, and I don't know what my impact necessarily is gonna be, but I'm also valuing the place where I am right now. The kinds of place, where I am, what God has put in front of me at this very moment, and how valuable and important and beautiful that is. But, no, I'm maybe not gonna be leading General Motors, fine. I never thought I would, but I also never thought I'd be able to. That has particular meaning for Kate, but I never thought that, or sometimes I have not valued what my role is in the places where I'm planted, right? And to think that
You got somebody coming just because you're.
well, and some people have heard this, my spiritual director, I said, well, I'm worried people are just gonna come because it's my class. Because I said, that sounds, and she was like, that's so awesome. Can't you just embrace that people would come because it was you? I said,
That's right.
if my spiritual director says it, I'm like, okay, I'll try to embrace that. But, yes, and that's a kind of leadership, right, that I could push off. I could be like, well, no, I want you to come because it's about leading for change and no, okay, come because it's me. Amazing. That's a kind of a leadership, right? Okay. So, some of you may have read some of you may not have read anything. I want to know where you are.
Is Lida on here?
Lida's not on there. I don't know what happened to
Oh.
Lida. I think it probably because she was traveling
Okay.
and
I
she was going in and out and it's difficult.
Right.
So maybe one of the ways we could connect is that we all can see or have received the manifesto, which is in the book. It's in your folder. I'm gonna pass out a few more copies for those who don't have them, it's fine.
Well, share it.
Yes.
And where,
The Another Way manifesto is on the website. Okay. And the reason I'm trying to find a way for us to enter into something there's a lot of words in the book. There's a lot of words in the material. The manifesto outlines kind of, if you were gonna do like a vision board or a brainstorming thing, and then you're gonna put it all, a word cloud, I don't know, and you're gonna put it down on a piece of paper, that's what you would get this. And so let's look at any of these statements that are on here that are kind of like, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I never thought of it that way. Like, how can we, as Fred said, echoing from the book, what are you curious about? Like, what sparks some curiosity within you about the manifesto?
is it in the book?
Yes,
Yeah.
in the book,
I love this.
it's on page 184. Thank you, Kate.
Sharon and I have both noted the first block that's dark. There's a future that mourns if you and I do not step into our purpose.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
We love that.
184.
How about the statement, embrace multiple ways of knowing, which I think gives you room to hear other people's thoughts. And it kind of gets back to that notion of shift from certainty to curiosity.
Yeah.
If you're willing to embrace other ways of knowing, you're going to open yourself up to hear.
Yes. So also in knowing, many of us are, I mean, we're in the same, mostly the same generation, and there was one way of knowing. And what was that way of knowing?
My mother's way.
There was your mother's way, but it's also like sitting at a desk,
Yes, right,
reading what someone else wrote.
right.
Right?
It's cool.
Going to school, there's an intellectual way of knowing, nothing wrong, I'm not anti-intellectual by any means, I'm not. But I mean, that's, and it is how we learn. I had a teacher who taught, right? You had someone who showed you your ABCs, you had someone who taught you how to count, right? That was a way of, like a learning environment like a school. What other ways though do we learn?
Well, by practice,
Yeah, experience.
right, experience.
Yeah. Right?
Showing up.
Showing up,
Right.
being available. And something you said too, Fred, listening. Now that's part of learning is listening, right? That's why some kids do better at school than other kids. The better listeners do better, right? The ones who have a hard time listening, and I don't mean that's because it just means some kids don't learn by listening. And if you were one of those kids, you found a different path to learning, right? I have a kid who doesn't learn by listening.
Yeah.
It took a little bit longer, for him to find the ways that he learned, because oftentimes that's not valued. If you're a good kid and you can sit still and you can see the material and then you can spit the material back out, you're a good learner. And so that's, I think, embrace the multiple ways of knowing. So experience, intuition. We definitely don't, that has only in the later parts of our lives has intuition began to be something we value. A place of knowing. I remember talking to my kids when they were little, what does your knowing place say? What do you know? And no one else, I mean, that sometimes doesn't get, I get it, it's tricky. That's why we like to do our knowing work in community, right? Because we have people to kind of check that out against. If you're sitting alone and, just trusting your intuition, you can see how that might go, kind of be a little bit scary. Sensing, so just something you sense and intuition, they've separated there. And also in chapter 2, they talk about it, and they talk about imagination as a way of knowing. They talk about interests as a way of, what do I like? And this is something particularly for, I'm not denigrating the males in the room, but I think particularly for women who often turn over a large part of their life to child rearing and caring for others. There's a point in our lives where we get that thing which says, or even if we're in business or we have a career, we have forgotten kind of like, oh, what did I like? Do I really like lamb, or did I just think I liked lamb? What is my favorite color? I mean, they sound like silly things, but we don't really examine them. Like if someone said, where would you like to go on vacation? When I was 30, I would have been like, I don't know. I mean, I was just so preoccupied with raising my children, taking, doing my job, working at the school, whatever the 1,000 things I did. So I kind of forgot that I had interest in something. Mm-hmm. And when I went on sabbatical later at 50, was it that long ago? Maybe I was 52. When I just did some work on what do I like to do? I used to like to sew. I used to like to cook. I used to like to, and I had time to sort of re-investigate those things. So our interests are kind of important as we discover what it is we're, the ways of knowing. So passion, experience. And I think the book does a great job about giving us some space to think about those things as we think about what is leadership. What else about the manifesto stands out to you, or maybe triggers something else, or says, oh, I don't know about that one yet?
Another one of these dark ones, I don't know if the dark ones apply to what the therapists think, but there is something called, there's a therapist who has done a book called The Body
Tells the Story.
No,
Is that
the body knows.
Oh, the body knows. Okay.
And it's about trauma.
Yeah.
And here and he is saying it as important as therapy, group therapy, all the other things they have come to deal with PTSD. Yoga, massage, here we go, sing, dance, move, take a meditative walk, and engage in other embodied practices. Integrating these ways of knowing moves us to places where we get stuck. And they have done, some people have had more results with yoga than they have with medicines, shock therapy. It's real interesting. It's a place where you hold your pain, is better treated with body movement.
And you have, so I love that you're putting your own experience in the therapeutic world, like back into this and giving it the credence that I think it deserves. Thank you for that. And that's so important. Go ahead, you're
And just one more, and this new therapy of eye movement, rapid eye movement, just by moving the finger, has done more because it helps rewire the places that have been disrupted in the brain, in the eyes. It's just fascinating.
So if you read Richard Rohr's daily meditations, his meditation for today from Dr. Lewis, Jackie Lewis, is about dance. And about dance as an African form of expression when all other means of expression were denied, enslaved people, that dance after the cotton was in, dance when someone's born, dance when someone jumps the broom, dance was this way that they could do that, and the way they could keep rhythm when drums were denied to them, right? So this whole thing, and how dance reconnected them to God, and showed that it was that there was still a God, right? And that in their trauma, how they figured out a way through the body and dance. It was beautiful. I'm saving. We're going to talk in a couple of weeks when we have our first Sunday school, just about the arc of trauma because of the storm and so on, and a little bit about, and I want to bring that piece into that, about how do we reconnect in trauma, and giving us a space to do it. Because look, every one of us was raised with some kind of thing. It was like, boys don't cry, suck it up, buttercup, whatever it was. That it's, I don't care if it was a little bit more gendered for sure, around male, virility, but it wasn't just about that. And because we were great at secret keeping, we were great at, holding stuff in, and yes, that's happened, and now we're moving on. Now we're not talking about that anymore, or we're never going to talk about it because I don't know how to do it. My mom would wait to tell me people were dead, like a year after they died. Oh, your great uncle? Oh, he died like a year ago. No, like, why wouldn't you tell me? Well, I didn't want you to be sad. Oh, I'm less sad now. No, you're not less sad now.
Probably more.
Yeah, more sad because I can't trust you to give me information that I need, to live a life. So, but that's not unusual. I don't think my mom was some sort of evil, maleficent person. I think that was just very common for her generation. Right?
The letter, come on.
Yes. So a way for us to connect to our emotions, it's just not been part of how we were raised mostly, or how things were structured, or whatever. Businesses, I don't remember, even in the church, until COVID, seriously, when we began to talk about, oh, how is your heart? How are you feeling, right? When we felt intentional about that, that we would have those kind of intentional conversations. I never had a conversation with my bishop about how I was feeling until COVID. I just think there wasn't a reason for it. And maybe that's one of the best things about COVID, was that it opened up people's ability to sort of talk. And then, and as part of that is to value singing, dancing, moving, being out in nature, whatever those things are that sort of when we know it and we've said it, like you say, what is it I need to do? Like Rob and I will talk, like, I just need to go outside and sit on that porch for like a half an hour in the afternoon sun. Like, it's restorative to me.
There was on YouTube, Did you all see it, the drumming circle in Asheville at Pritchard Park? And I
No,
always dismiss, oh, they need to get those hippies out of there and they're bothering people. And they just looked like they were having so much fun after the stress of the last week in this drumming circle that was just full of people dancing and singing and playing the drums.
and we've seen in schools, particularly schools where there's a lot of stress that surrounds the school, either homes or neighborhoods or whatever, drumming circles with kids are just kind of reduce the amount of behavior problems. Wonder why that is, right? What is that connection to that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And
Well,
go ahead, Kate.
Well, I've always found that dancing has been the place for me to go. You know, in my mind, I might even be dancing and not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But I think it's something that if you can get, the song that we have, I only remember one line of it. I think it was "Dance, dance wherever you may be. I am
Right.
the Lord of the dance," said he. And it's a wonderful thing. I was in a church one time, actually it was a cathedral with people they thought were going to be great leaders. I'm thinking, and I got sent to the wrong spot. But they had passed out the sheet of that song. And everybody had to, now we are in the Chicago Cathedral, and everybody had to stand up and take off their shoes and sing this song and dance. And just dance and sing it. And it was, it was, to me, it was a natural thing because I like to dance. I don't particularly like to sing out loud because I can't, but everybody was trying, and so we ended up, if anybody had walked in that cathedral and seen these Episcopalians swaying up on the altar and the thing, they probably would have thought, whoops, it's another one that's come down the drain. But it was so wonderful.
Great example. Yeah. Perfect.
Allison, I like this, up at the top left, under there is a future, it says cultivate your own interior. So cultivate your own interior life and its communal sources.
Thank you.
Leaders who lack awareness of their inner sources tend to reproduce what already exists. And that's that repeating, a solution, and you keep banging your head against the wall. And I think that's important, to cultivating your own interior rather than repeating.
Well, isn't it, when we talk about how we do that in a group setting by using I statements.
Yeah.
This is the one way we can get to that.
Yeah.
This is one way I can get to that when I'm not making it about you. I am trying to make it about me. Right. That's, and it's vulnerable, right? This is what it creates in us, is this sort of sense of, whoop, I'm saying what I feel. That means I'm ready to allow you to attack me. But I look weak. I look whatever it is. And maybe because I am, right? So the point of this is it's not about that, but and unless we do that work, how much, you could go your whole life and never do that work. That's whatever. God's not gonna, you're still probably going to heaven, because I think everybody's going to heaven, but that's a theological statement.
I'm with it.
But I wonder about the value of us looking inward first before we go out, and what that changes. That.
Well, and that enter the word discernment then.
Yes. Yeah. It's right there. I don't think, can you do it without doing it? I suppose there's a way. I don't know. I like this way. So So thank you for bringing that up. And what we're doing here is practicing what? We're practicing dialogue. Even this, and this thing where we all believe in Jesus, we all love Church of the Good Shepherd, we all like living where we live, we all have certain privileges, and, right, we do. And it makes dialogue easier, doesn't it? Makes it easier for me. I know what I'm invoking my privilege by saying that. When we get to chapter 2, you'll see what I mean, because there are, that chapter 2 talks about what are the limitations by our privilege, and sometimes what are the boundaries that we establish without knowing it, because we come from a particular place. It's just about knowing it. It's not about shaming anyone because I'm the priest here and you all see me in a particular way. I'm not ashamed, and I'm not, but I have to recognize that. I have to recognize that, because that's an advantage, if you want to call it that. Maybe there's a better word. That I hold a spot here. Like Irv holds a spot there because he's a man, and that doesn't mean it's bad to be a man. I just mean he holds it. Our society has a particular place for men, and they have for some time, a couple thousand years, or maybe more. But and so if he recognizes that, as he recognizes that, it's the ability to speak into that privilege is what we're looking at. As white people, we have to speak into that privilege. As people who have more than $12 in our bank account, right? We have to speak into that. Maybe I just have $12.50, so okay. But you know what I mean? Like, we recognize the advantages that we bring to a conversation, to a community, to a dialogue, and just speak into that. I think that makes people, I have found it makes people uncomfortable, because it's like I'm trying to shame them because they have something. I'm not. I'm just saying, recognize what that does. When we give out scholarships, when we help children figure out their college goals or their vocational goals, we are, as a committee, I think they are recognizing the privileges that they do not have and how that might impact them as they go to take on college life.
And of course, with those privileges become
Responsibilities?
absolute.
Yes, ma'am. That's it. Yes, ma'am. And one of the responsibilities is recognizing that. That's the first one, is that awareness. And that's what's so important when you have conversations with other people. We have to, that's why, I'm going back to what you said, Sharon, examining that part of the manifesto, examining our inner lives first. That's part of who we are. I get it. And maybe you worked hard for that. And kudos about it. Right? We went to college, we studied, we got degrees, all that stuff. Those are they weren't easy things, but we do recognize that we did kind of get a step up, right? That's a step up. And it's not a punishment.
Skip that part. Go right to, all right, now how do I get my way by pretending that I want to listen to everybody?
I don't know. Thank you for being honest.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to everybody, but I got my point of view.
Yeah.
And how am I, how can I lead? Which is
All right, so,
try.
no, it's not, but it's interesting. So is
We
there,
have this one down here.
yes, ma'am, go ahead.
New possibility, cultivate new possibilities that emerge by resisting the tyranny of either or. There's some things that I don't care what you say, it's still gonna be either or. But other things, there's an either or. Now, there's
There's a paradox.
some things, there's a line in the sand. You're not, there's many things there's not.
Where is that one, Ann?
The last one on the right.
Cultivate.
Oh, I got it.
Paradoxes that shape our communal life with patience and curiosity. Curiosity is what Fred was talking about.
Yeah. And so what I love is someone who knows she stands on the shoulders of other people.
Yeah.
Is that one on the opposite side of the page, and it's
Well,
like
that's what's.
the wisdom of our ancestors and is always present and available to us. So remember to welcome them as we face the most difficult tasks of our lives. And so again, that comes with its own baggage. depending on where we are and who we are and what communities we're in. But recognizing that, whether that was for good or for ill, there's still pain sometimes with some of that, right? We worship in a church that was built with slave money. There's no, you know, Wade Hampton made all of his money using slave labor. So that, you know, that we recognize that sin. We have to. That's part of our dialogue. But that's not what we do. We try not to use enslaved people to fund our lives. That's not who we are, right? But we have to know where we came from.
And you know, I think it speaks to where we are now, because even though we do not have enslaved labor, do we have cheaper labor?
Yes, we do. You know we do, right? Yeah.
Who don't have the same resources. I mean, have better resources than enslaved people, but don't, you know, their lives are harder.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to be careful that you're helping more than hurting.
Isn't that something in the past, I'd say 15 or 20 years, and how we give money or how we give resources, and do we do it in a way that further denigrates people? Do we do it in a way that empowers people? Do we do it in a way that says, oh, look what we have, and now we're giving this to you, right? If you read like Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, and he talks about maybe different ways for us to engage in the outreach project, which we have developed a ton of those, you know, like here, I think in our outreach partnerships, probably done we're not perfect. There's always something we can learn and know and change, but we've done a better job. Maybe that's not the way to say it, but I wonder, it feels to me that in some places I've served, right, that this is at least a place who's examining those sorts of scenarios. You know, are we just embracing ways that we maintain our kind of status?
Hierarchy.
Our hierarchy, yeah, you know, so, yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you, awesome. Because yes, no, it's not like everything got fixed in 1865. I don't think that at all, right?
And I have a problem with the fact that a lot of people disagree with me on this one, but that won't be unusual, that people want to do away with history. They want to have symbols of history. And yes, there are some people that look at symbols of history and use them the wrong way. But if you take away all the symbols and the reminders of history, then we might tend to rewrite history the way we want to hear it.
Yeah.
And we may overlook those things. And I find it amazing that because to go into those things, then they start more agitation for those who don't want to rewrite the history. It's always something that will bring up excitement or aggravation with somebody. And it's like, well, I know I talk about it all the time, but when these people start talking about these terrible Jews that are doing this, that, and the other, and they're killing the Palestinians, and I just have to cut the TV off. I'm like, folks, let's go back and read a little bit about what happened for thousands and thousands of years. And do I think they ought to be killing the people in Gaza? No. But, you know, that's one of those conversations that when you have a personal involvement in it, that you either stay out of the conversation or you get angry at the people who are saying that without confronting them, which I'm not sure if my confronting people comes out always the way that it should. But those are the kind of things that I think that if you are a good leader or a person that is put in the position of leading people or being major part of a conversation, you need to be very careful because you do not know who is sitting around you.
Yeah.
You-
Well, I mean, is there some part of the manifesto then that speaks to you, most clearly about that? I mean, that is, of course, a huge issue. And, and how we start to unravel that string of Middle East policy and engagement. I love listening to you, Kate, talk about it because you carry with you, the ancestors. You're recognizing your ancestors in that, and I can see how history is important. That we know all that we can, right, and to try to see it. But what we don't want is for anyone to be, war. Like we used to say in the 70s, war is never the answer, right? Like that, we know that. And so I think maybe we can agree. This is that thing about trying to find a common thing. Is there something that speaks to you from the manifesto? Sorry, I asked you a question and then just started talking.
I didn't read it all because I didn't find the book, okay? But I do like the one about the dancing, and I started thinking about all the different times. I gave you some Walter Brueggemann tapes one time, and he talks about how the women of Israel danced when you would not think that they would be dancing, that they just got up and danced. And so that flashed before my eyes again when I read that. So I started making a list of times when I know that people show joy or dance when it does not necessarily seem the appropriate thing to do, but that it's a release. I don't know. I'm babbling. I'll
No,
stop.
you're not. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else on the manifesto? Just refer to it as we go. It's the shorthand, right? It's like if you want some talking point, if someone says, "What are you doing in there?" You can say, "I don't know. Let's see. Let's pick this box, and I'll talk to you about that." There are questions at the end of every chapter, right? And generally, those last set of questions. Say, for example, if I go to chapter 1, which is on creating a shared space. And he goes to some detail about the difference between a shared space and a safe space. I just thought that was interesting. I would not have made that connection that maybe we should talk about this as a shared space because it's implying something like I cannot create a safe space for everyone in the room. We can agree on some ways that we're going to conduct ourselves, but how you interpret that or how you expect that or how that sits with you is completely different and sort of a little oppressive on my part to sort of say, and this is a safe space. Right? That's a little, and I hadn't thought of it like that. But establishing shared guidelines is one of those things that we can talk about. We talked last week about how this space makes it hard to sit face to face, to look in each other's eyes. We don't, if this was like a room with couches, it would just, a softer space would probably be more appropriate. But this is what we have for now, until I create another space somewhere with couches. I don't know, or something, chairs that move or, and have internet. So like we have some space with soft space, like the room we do Walking the Mourner's Path in is a soft space, but we don't have to worry about internet connectivity. So I could love to do that the old library space would work for us, but it doesn't have no internet, so it doesn't work that way. So what was I gonna, open up to you, this thing? We're gonna call it Brave Space, which is, that's what it's called, Brave Space, because we're gonna try to be brave within ourselves. There's a gal, her name is Dr. Catherine Meeks. She was in charge of the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Healing, and she, her blog and her website is called Brave Space. In fact, she just received an award. I don't remember what it was for, but anyway, she's a phenomenal person who has worked for years in that capacity to create brave spaces.
Brave spaces, meaning,
Places where you can be brave. I'm trying to do everything in
What's her name?
Catherine Meeks. Catherine with a C, Meeks.
From Macon, Georgia.
She is from Macon, Georgia.
yeah, that name's familiar.
Uh-huh.
She had she had a home that was hers, but she used it for, after-school tutoring and teaching, ways to survive on little money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's very instrumental. She's the first direct, I don't think she was, well, she might have been, she and Bishop Wright, and then they had a falling out, but she and Bishop Wright, collaborated on establishing the Absalom Jones Center for, racial healing and reconciliation at, Morehouse College in Atlanta.
Huh.
And that,
Allison, I'm gonna have to leave.
okay,
See you next
read
week.
on. Okay, see you next week.
What chapter for next week?
Well, I think reading chapter 2 is probably on call, purpose, and vocation.
Okay.
We will go back to chapter 1 because we still need to establish guidelines and everybody be clear about what those are. I think we all have them, but I want to be intentional about naming them, okay? I would read in here, this is, you have to jump around a little bit, just the way it's organized, because it goes through the chapters first and then it goes back. But it's small print, I get that, but I think the way it's condensed makes it super easy to kind of get again, like, I didn't really get that, or whatever. You can read this and think about it. And this was designed mostly for people, younger age people who are considering a vocation in religious life or in public life. So this whole material is just 20 years of people who've been doing this work with young people as they struggle with, what do I want to be when I grow up? And can I be in the church? All right. Yes, please. I'm gonna pass this out.
Finish up. So I've been recommended, I really admire what this church has done to help get that Pisgah legal aid
Yes,
going.
yes, ma'am.
And I've been, you can take toilet paper and soap, but I've been encouraging people to give donations to that legal aid because they're helping people get their FEMA payments and they need money. Is that a good place to be putting money?
And they always need money. They always need money.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to get up to speed because not everyone knows how FEMA works, right? So I know that in the conversation with them, they were getting up to speed on what FEMA, how to translate that information that FEMA's putting out so everybody can know what that is.
Well, how do you give money there?
Yeah, Pisgah Legal.
Pisgah Legal.
Yeah, PISGAH Legal. You know, the one that's in the barn?
It's in the bazaar barn.
Oh, yeah.
Also help clarify all these rumors going around,
Right,
so
Oh,
it's
it's
just
terrible.
a
yeah,
good place to.
Oh.
Put them in.
yeah, that is. I think that you can't go wrong. I mean, we have reached out to them. We've reached out to all of our outreach partners to say, hey, we're already in a relationship with you. And now there's been this thing that's happened. And what do you need from us? We already have established relationships. We already know you're good people. You do, we're giving you money. So most of them have said, can you hold off? Because we don't even know.
We don't know yet.
Right? And I don't know what everybody said, but because we just sent that out on Monday. So I have no way of knowing I know we've gotten responses really, But most people were saying, let's wait, because we know the needs are gonna continue. It's not like,
Right.
it's, you know, you put it.
And you need to know what's legitimate too. That's what always stops me, because I'm thinking, is this real? Is this a real person? Or is this
Yeah.
something that, you know, someone's thrown up there to get some pocket change? That's why, to me, it's like safer to send it to, you know, like Rob's or your discretionary funds.
Right, Episcopal Relief and Development, or the bishop's discretionary funds, I mean,
You know, me and bishops.
Thousands to these 40
Right.
agencies, so we know they're.
yeah. So let's pray. So if you don't have the Ubuntu handout from last week, chapter talks about Ubuntu. And if you know,
Well, how
that,
do I get these?
they're online on the website. It'll connect to the class.
Okay,
Documents should be there. But so this is this principle from South Africa that the church has been embracing for now, I mean, nearly 20 years. It's not new, but it might be new to some of you about how we see each other. So it's a theological understanding, but it's also kind of a way I see you and you see me. Therefore, we are people, and therefore we are of God, right? Like, it's not like I don't see you. So one of the exercises we're gonna do next week is just practicing that I see you, and working from. But if you weren't here, I've given you a short overview. So that's here if you need it, okay? On the back of the handout from today, is the prayer for the knowledge of God's creation from our prayer book. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, you made the universe with all of its marvelous order, its atoms, worlds, and galaxies, and the infinite complexity of living creatures. Grant that as we probe the mysteries of your creation, we may come to know you more truly and more surely fulfill our role in your eternal purpose. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
It's kind of a bridge between this week and next week, because we're looking for God's purpose and that there's an